I'm not going to finish just yet because I have a couple of quick fire questions just to finish it off. You've been refereeing a lot of players, so give us a few. What players were the funniest? Who's the funniest player that you ever had to ref?
I think that was Stan Bowles. I'll tell you a story. I was refereeing a cup game, and it was Wolverhampton Wanderers versus Queen's Park Rangers. He played for Queen's Park Rangers, and at the time, the England player Tony Curry played. And we're probably 30, 40 minutes into the game when Tommy Docherty, who was the manager of Queen's Park Rangers then, comes to the touchline and signals that they're going to make a substitution. And we didn't have the boards. They didn't have numbers and boards. So I get the shout that it's Stan Bowles that's going to come off. So everybody's heard it. And Stan Bowles is moving in the direction opposite to where he's expected to leave the field of play. And I go across to Stan and say, Stan, you've been subbed. And with a few expletives, he goes, I'm not. Get out of here. And I go, listen, Stan, you're being subbed. And he wasn't going to go. He clearly wasn't going to go. And I've gone, cracky, this is a challenge. So I go to Tony Curry. I said, Tony, Stan's being subbed. Can you help me get him off? Absolutely not. You're on your own, mate. So I've then gone to Stan Bowles and I've gone, Stan, do you get paid the same for playing 30, 40 minutes as playing for 90? And he goes, yeah, and ran off. So I always found that funny. Vinnie Jones was funny. He'd always have a quip. So I think there are lots of players who I can remember refereeing Manchester United against where it was. I think it might have been Arsenal. And there's a debate going on. And Joe Jordan had this thing of catching the ball. You know, his arms were down straight and the ball would hit his arms and he'd gain control. It was handball. So I'd blown him very early on in the game. I'd blown him for handball, right? And he's gone at me like the Scottish guy he was. He was very unhappy. So I run alongside him. I didn't want to, so early on, I didn't want confrontation. So I run alongside him and said, look, calm down, calm down. It's one decision. I'm going to make some more. And he wouldn't let it go. And he comes back at me again. So I blow the whistle, stop the game. He stood aside of me and said, right, let me tell you this, Joe. I'll be dead honest with you. You're banned from Cinderella's nightclub in London as of now. And he looked at me gobsmacked. And his mate, remember, Gordon McQueen and him had been signed from Leeds United. And Gordon McQueen comes across and says, what's the problem? I go, I've just told him he's banned from Cinderella's nightclub. He's gone, what are you on about? I said, well, what am I called? Keith Hackett. And he goes, yeah. I said, well, my brother John is a director of Stringfellas nightclub and he's the director of Cinderella's Rockefellers in Leeds. And he goes, oh, you're kidding. And that killed it. I mean, then there was no arguing from Joe. And so we smile about that. Occasionally when I meet these guys, that's the subject that comes up, you know. I think it's using the craft on the football field. So, yeah.
Okay, who's the hardest one to ref?
I thought the hardest one was Laurie Sanchez of Wimbledon. And everybody says, you're kidding me. Vinnie Jones, Dennis Wise would do it openly. You know? Horton, Luton was the same. Do it openly. Honest cloggers at times. And easy to deal with. Sanchez was like, they tell me Johnny Giles. Yeah. Johnny Giles was sly and would do it on out of the eye of the referee and stir it up a bit. So, these people have a brain, don't get me wrong. They know when to do it. And they're the ones that would know when to do it, which is outside your sight line, and they're clever with it. And it's only when you review a video afterwards that you see, just a minute, I didn't even see that. Right. And what you then do is you prepare the next game. So you know full well, or you get the clip in, you walk on the field. I can remember walking on, having the semi-final of the FA Cup, Wimbledon playing. And I think they won the game. But I remember going through and I said to Vinnie Jones, can you tell Larry that I'm not going to accept the ones off the ball? And so they suddenly went, yeah, okay, fine. You're alive to it. Yeah.
What about the best player to watch up close?
Well, the sadness of my career was that I only refereed George Best once, and that was at Fulham. And it was an horrible day. He was playing for Fulham against Stoke. And after 25 minutes, I'd blown for a free kick. He'd been fouled, as he normally was, because he was always in possession of the ball. And he says to me, how long to go, ref? And I've gone, we've only been playing 25 minutes. Blow the whistle, let's get off. The weather's awful. But he then played brilliantly. So, one of the players that I really liked was Kenny Dalglish. And the reason I liked Dalglish was 100%. Every game. Every game I refereed Kenny Dalglish, 100%. And he would tell you, and he would moan. He wasn't happy. But for me, I knew that it wasn't at me directly. It was. I just want to win. And I was fortunate enough to referee John Charles' testimonial. Bobby Collins and John Charles shared a testimonial. And Dalglish was invited to play for Leeds United, and we're 3 or 4 minutes from the end of the game. And Dalglish puts out a lovely ball to a young trainee player, I think, who'd come on to make the numbers up at Leeds. And the guy just let the ball run out. And I almost had to get in between Dalglish to save the young player, because Dalglish was so upset it was untrue that a pass that he'd made had just been ignored by the player in an idle fashion. So he was that type of player. He was, I haven't been to Anfield recently, but when I did under the PGMOL, it was always a warm greeting, a mutual respect, I think.
Good. A player, and I have this down, a player that you had to keep your eye on. Obviously, Laurie Sanchez was up there. So, but what about a sort of a hard player that you'd have to keep your eye out for in a game, and how would you deal with that player?
I think that sometimes, let me give you an example. You can have someone like Paul Gascoigne, who can put in horrendous challenges, as he did in the cup final and got away with it. Yeah. So it's that unpredictable element that's there with that. So if he was going to be substituted, if he was not in the team but on the bench, you knew that was going to be a problem. And so you would have to meet him. Before he comes on, you'd meet him, run alongside him and say, hey, can't understand, get away. Your manager not picking you, Paul. What's he on about then? Such a good player as you. Look, got the family in the stand, come to watch you, not me. Just behave. And so in a way, you're using some street craft to win over a player. And it's that street craft sometimes that you say to young referees, look, you've got to know your players, and you've got to know how to deal with them. There are some players in the game that you couldn't get anywhere near, Horton of Luton that I've already mentioned. You knew full well that if you were in his zone, he'd be telling you how to referee every minute of the game, and he'd undermine you. He'd attempt to undermine you, and he was the same when he was a manager or assistant manager at home. He'd want to undermine you. He just didn't get on with referees, no matter who you were. And then you got people like Neil Warnock, who I used to get on quite famously, but there were times when we didn't see eye to eye, and as a result, I respected his view and chose to disagree. He only annoyed me really once when I was refereeing at Scarborough, and he'd just taken over as the boss. He'd moved from Burton Albion, become the Scarborough manager, and he shouted from the touchline, "You're coasting, ref. You've got a white badge, and you're trying to win the game. And we haven't come to watch you, referee. We've come to watch the players," sort of thing. So that really annoyed me, particularly when a few months earlier I'd had a call from him to say, would I do a talk at his testimonial dinner with Fred Truman, cricketer. And leading up to that, he left Burton Albion to join Scarborough and upset Burton Albion. So I get a call from Freddie Truman one evening, and Freddie Truman was like a god in cricket and a Yorkshireman as well. And he comes on. I understand you're the you're the guy that's going to be talking with me at testimonial for Neil Warnock, but I see he's left, so it can't be going ahead. And eventually we get to say that it's going ahead, and Warnock didn't put a show in. So we did this testimonial dinner for Neil Warnock at Burton Albion, and he was the Scarborough manager, and I was always bemused by that. But, that's the privilege.
You've obviously bumped into many a manager. I'll ask you about Brian Clough, because Brian Clough, just everyone loved the idea of Brian Clough. What was he like to deal with, and what managers did you find hard to deal with, and what ones were always comfortable and maybe made friends with?
Clough was brilliant. You knew full well that he wanted his players to get on with playing the game and not get involved with the referee at all. And I got a call very early in my career from Nottingham Forest to say, would I be prepared to referee a pre-season Nottingham Forest versus Tampa Bay Rowdies? At that time, the arrangement was that if a friendly was being played in Sheffield, then a Sheffield referee would referee it, in Nottingham, a Nottingham referee. And there was a well-known Nottingham referee that I said, well, I can't because it's a Nottingham referee. No, Mr. Clough would really like you to come and referee this match. And so I met Peter Taylor before the game, 18,000 fans in to watch the game. And Taylor came in and said, look, Keith, Mr. Clough don't want any red cards. And I've gone, whoa, just a minute. You can't tell me how to referee. That's the first thing. I said, but I'm sure, because this is a pre-season friendly, I'm in agreement that we can avoid red cards. And it's dead simple. There is a way to do that. You be quick enough to sub them before I produce the red card. And he came back, knocked on the door. He said, yeah, he understands that. But what he's decided is this. If any player is giving you a bit of jip, look in his direction and he'll sub him immediately. So I blow the whistle, we start the game, and Larry Lloyd, number 5, sticks in a foul on this young Tampa Bay player, Rowdy's player. He's as good as kicked him in the air. It's a bit heavier than a foul. It's a yellow card at least. And so I've gone up to give him a bit of a rollicking and saying, look, we're only a few minutes. I know what's going off here, and I'm not going to allow it. And I hear Clough shouting, Larry, 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 from the touchline. And of course, I've looked towards the touchline, and Clough immediately, slightly flustered, goes to Larry Lloyd, come off. So Larry Lloyd's taken off after about 3 or 4 minutes. Some years later, I'm refereeing Wigan Athletic. Larry Lloyd's the manager. And as I arrived, the secretary of the club, a woman, said to me, Larry Lloyd wants to see you upstairs. And I go, well, just a minute. I don't know what it's about, but I'm bringing a linesman with me. I said, I can't be seen to be seeing a manager privately before the game. And so the guy goes up, and Larry Lloyd said to me, tell me why you sent me off. And I didn't tell you off. Yes, you did. Brian Clough said you sent me off. I go, no, I didn't. This is the arrangement. When the other story about Clough was this. Nigel Clough told me this story, right? So Kenny Burns had asked for an increase in salary, and Brian Clough wouldn't stick. He wouldn't give him a raise. And he's gone, no, absolutely not. You're not getting anyone. So as a result, they parted company. Burns left. And shortly afterwards, Forrester played in London, and they've stopped off at a service station near Nottingham. And Clough's in the coach. Nigel and a few players have gone to the toilet. As they come out, there is Kenny Burns. And they're asking what Kenny Burns is doing. And Kenny Burns is the manager of Boston in the Midland League, not Boston United, the other team in the Midland League. So they then go back to the coach, and Burns is going to the 12-seater van that's carrying the team, his team. So Nigel says to his dad, boss, just bumped into Kenny Burns. Guess what? He said, Kenny Burns. The Kenny Burns. So he then gets off the coach, right, and says to the players, get off the coach. So they all get off the coach. They all go to this 12-seater van. And he's gone, Mr. Burns, come out. Mr. Burns, come out. So Kenny Burns comes out. And he goes, right, Mr. Burns. He said, what are you doing now? He said, well, I'm manager of Boston. He said, yeah. Look at these players, he said. Right, he said, now let me tell you this. Kenny Burns, Scottish international, came to Nottingham Forest. He was a bit of a clogger. And he turned out to be one of the finest centre-halves in the game. He came and knocked on my door and wanted a few quid more than I was prepared to pay him. We split company. Now there's a warning. Kenny Burns is now on a 12-seater bus, eating fish and chips, going nowhere, and you're sat on a 45-seat luxury coach, right? You've had a meal on the way from the game. Kenny Burns, did you make the right decision? I think not, and got back off the coach. And so Clough was a one-off. I mean, he was coming towards the end of his life, and he was struggling and suffering. And I was a PGMOL boss and I was at Nottingham Forest watching a young referee. I sat there on my own, and I looked across, and he was pretty gaunt, and I got this sort of come across, and I sat alongside him, and the warmth in his handshake, and he just said, you weren't a bad referee, Keith. You weren't a bad referee. And for me, coming from him, that was a real sort of special thing. But there are others. Bob Paisley, Bill Shankly. I refereed at Workington. And it's an awful long way from Sheffield. And I stayed in Kendal overnight and then drove, and I was at the ground for 10 o'clock. And the groundsman greeted me. The pitch was in perfect condition at Workington. And we get into a chat. We've had a long conversation. And then the groundsman says to me, look, come and have a look at this tractor of mine. And it's a grey tractor, Ford, I think it was. And he said, Bill Shankly bought this tractor when he was manager here. I didn't even know he was a manager at Workington. Didn't even know he was there. And he goes, I know, Mr. Hackett, next week you've got a bigger game than the one today. And I've gone, today's is a big game for me. He goes, no, you're at Anfield next week. And I want you to do me a favour. Find out Mr. Shankly and tell him the tractor's doing okay. So I've gone I refereed the football match. The following week, referees used to go in the players' lounge. There are no players there, by the way, to have a cup of tea and a sandwich before the match. So I'm sat there. Shankly comes in and says, good afternoon. Very, very civil, very correct sort of guy. Mr. Hackett, yes, you're the referee today? Yes. He said, you were at Workington last week. I said, I was. And what about the groundsman? I said, what about the ground? I said, it's immaculate. What about the groundsman? Wonderful guy. And I knew his name then. I can't remember his name. And he goes, and what about my tractor? So here I am about to referee Liverpool against Wolverhampton Wanderers. And Bill Shankly's talking to me about this tractor at Workington. And the two linesmen are absolutely gobsmacked. I mean, they're looking at me as though I've come off a planet. But it shows, in a way, it shows that we're all human.
Yeah, and football at every and any level is the same, no matter what. Everyone just loves the game.
Absolutely. I mean, I went to, I refereed at Sunderland, Manchester United, very, very early on in my career. And to referee Manchester United in literally my first season was like incredible. And I refereed the game and come into the dressing room after the match, and Manchester United lost 1-0. And I switched the radio on because we were listening for the results. And they go, we're going to Roker Park to interview Tommy Docherty, and I'm listening now really intently. And the interview guy says, I think it was Desmond Lynham, says, well, Mr. Tommy, I'm sure you've had a great game at Sunderland, but I noticed you've lost. And he goes, yeah, disappointing result in one way, but you know, my son plays for Sunderland. He's on the winning team. His mother will be really happy. Clearly, I'm not. He said, but I just want to point out the young referee's I think the young referee, I've not seen him before, he's had a terrific match. And he's the star of the game. And I was absolutely gobsmacked. And, you know, a few people came in, I got changed. And I came out into the car park area of the old Roker Park. And as I'm walking across, a youngster came up to me and said, Ref, can I have your autograph? I've gone, but I'm the referee's son. I know. I want your autograph. And nobody asked me for my autograph before. So I start signing this piece of paper, pretty big. Best wishes, Keith Hackett. I handed him back. He looked at it, tore it, shredded it, and threw it in the air and said, my dad says you're rubbish. That's football. That's football.